satisfying to drive a fast car in its natural environment, and especially for me, the Porsche super freak. But today is a special day because we have all the GT cars from Porsche thanks to Ron Simon's racing at the Nürburgring.
It's gotten insane where about 40% of the cars that Porsche sells now are these GT variant cars, the GT3s, the GT2RSs, and now that GT4 RS. And those cars are the most aggressive cars, the most track-ready cars, the least street-usable cars. This is the latest variant as of the time we're shooting this film. This is the 992 generation GT3, not the GT3 RS, but as of right now, this is the most GT3 you can buy, and it goes up against that GT4 RS.
I'm in the Cayman GT4 RS. Hadn't driven one till now. Ugh. What Porsche has done is put the GT3 Cup engine into the Cayman.
There it is. There's the 4-liter right there out of the GT3. But in order to fit it in the Cayman, they had to spin it 180 degrees. They had to give it new intakes, which are right behind your ear. It's right here in your 3/4 windows. Those are gone and are now the intakes for the engine, which is exposed right over your other shoulder. You are sharing air with this engine, and it's fantastic.
Maybe? Are you kidding me? That will never get old. That noise, I can't believe that noise.
And of course it revs to 9,000 RPM, a little bit less than it does in that GT3, except there's a lot more hearing it.
I have to do that again. I didn't know I would like that so much. That doesn't sound good. That feels good. That's only 4,000 RPM.
Great cars, great roads, and all the reasons we love to drive.
TV, web, and podcast. This is Everyday Driver.
This is the big brother to the Cayman. Well, not technically because it's not the RS. At this point, the GT3 RS 992 is not out yet.
But this is the organ donor for the GT4 RS. The engine in this is the one that's been put in that GT4 RS.
502 horsepower, 346 pound-feet of torque. That's not that much more power than the Cayman. This is 1 mile per hour faster on top speed. Forget about the price, because these cars right now do not cost what you think they cost. I have seen them for $339,000 US. That is a lot of money.
There's no denying that the 911 has just become a big car. In the 992 generation, it is only fractionally bigger than it was in the 991, but the 991 was a big jump to a large car.
The 992 wasn't my favorite when it first came out. I wasn't convinced about the taillights, I wasn't convinced about the rear section, but seeing the car in person, it looks smaller to my eye, and it certainly drives smaller. Look around this car. You know the RS is going to be full of holes. That's what the RS needs. This is the thing that Porsche has to fight with every generation of 911. Make it look updated, modern, classic, but they can't go too far because if it's not a 911, it doesn't look like one, they would get screwed.
This has the very straight cliff face front that 911s have had all the way since the beginning in the 60s. If you watch our 50 years of 911 film, we talk about all of them. This is like that very early first gen as far as the shape is concerned, but it's just covered in screens. Otherwise, the seats are amazing. The roll cage is really cool. I feel like it's a race car in those respects. This has that weird thing you normally only sense in older muscle cars, and that is when it sits still, it grumbles. It's unhappy about sitting still. There's a lot of vibration through the engine and drivetrain that just works its way forward through the car.
Yeah. Oh. The big news here is the suspension. For the first time ever on a road-going 911, double wishbone configuration up front. That has changed the character of this car entirely.
Porsche has had a single strut suspension up front forever. It allows them to have that really usable frunk. This has got a double wishbone, which they're carrying in from their racing program, and it does add a precision and a sharpness to the steering, even on the road, that isn't available in GT3s prior. It has taken the 911's party piece, which has been its interesting light steering. It has just amplified that even more. This has got such precision and such information in the steering. It definitely is better than the 991.
Better than the prior generation GT2 RS, and I remember that car because it stood out in my mind as the best. And how did Porsche do it again? How did they make this car better? There's a sensitivity to the steering. There's a light feel that has never existed, in my opinion. And it's just over 3,000 pounds. It's like 3164 with the PDK. Bigger brakes, the brakes are lighter. Porsche actually focused on lightweighting this car. So this car is a lighter car than the Cayman. How is that possible? And that felt really good.
This is so much car for the road. It's borderline too much car for the road. To really find the magic of this, you do have to get it onto a track. The other thing going on, though, is that this is still starting to suffer a bit of a recurring Porsche problem, and that is everything is so good and so capable at upper levels that on the street it gets less interesting.
This, on a canyon road, is fun. I like how this drives. It's interesting, it's light, it's informative. I didn't expect the smaller feeling of this car because 911s have grown in size so much. This car is fun to drive.
By this point in the 911 history, it still has a rear engine because it always has, but feel-wise, it starts to feel quite a bit like a normal mid-engine car. The grip in the rear is excellent. You can be a bonehead and you can still make it do the wrong thing, but you gotta try pretty hard. Of course, that rear engine allows you to drive this car a little differently than a lot of other cars.
Porsche has made the 911 chassis better. Of course, they've fought physics for years. A rear-engine car just shouldn't be, right? But this car now has the neutrality, the feeling of that Cayman. I love that rotation, and here it is on the 992.
I respect the 911, but I'm never able to connect with the 911 enough. Of course, the 911 has always been the big boy. This is a huge bump up in power from that Cayman GT4, the non-RS, which was the king of the Caymans until this guy showed up. It's a kind of a parts bin greatest hits car. They pulled the really good stuff from everywhere to make the ultimate Cayman, kind of like what BMW did when they took M3 parts to make the BMW 1M. This is that kind of thinking for the Cayman.
If you're looking for the differences between the regular GT4 and the GT4 RS, it's all about aerodynamics. That new wing is adopted from the 911 RSR. That's right, the full race car.
I've got analog gauges in here. It's actually enjoyable to look at a real gauge with a genuine needle doing things. I don't know why that's bad.
Carbon fiber everything, little nylon loops. This car only comes with PDK, but I do love that it's kind of looks like a shifter here. You don't get any sport modes. You do have the suspension setting here in PDK Sport, which really brings this car to life. And then that noise. Okay, I had to. Oh, I'm gonna take up smoking. That is so good.
In the Cayman GT4 RS, this engine makes 493 horsepower, which is plenty. It's great. Now, because of different placement, different exhaust, different intakes, this is a little bit less powerful than you find it in the GT3.
Oh, that was 4,000 RPM. That was nothing.
Come on, PDK. You you can't help but hear exactly what the engine's doing and exactly how it's breathing, because it's right here with you. You can't escape it. You can get over 100 decibels of sound, noise out of this engine while in the cabin. That is ear-damaging stuff. You're going to happily go deaf in this car. That's what's going to happen. But it's not just that engine that's changed, going from standard Cayman GT4 to Cayman GT4 RS. The RS version has other changes throughout.
The gearing is shorter on this car, shorter than the regular janky old GT4. That's right.
The PDK in here, the gearing and the controller out of the prior GT3, the 991 GT3 RS.
Yeah, shorter ratios have changed the character of this car. And the suspension actually feels comfortable on the road.
If you're not on a perfect road, it's going to be quite bumpy. But this is a track car. It's a full-on track car. It's intended for that. You could drive it on the street, but I don't know that you're going to want to that much.
This is almost a 200-mile-an-hour car. Have you ever thought a Cayman would be a 200-mile-an-hour car? But what amazes me the most for the stats for this car is the weight. It's 3,227 pounds. My Cayman GTS from 2015 is 200 pounds lighter than this car. I would chalk it up to the engine and the transmission. It's a bigger displacement, and yet they've overcome any weight differential with a lightweight driving experience.
This GT4 does not have the double wishbone suspension that you find in the new GT3. It still has the strut suspension front setup. This is even fun on the street in a way that the 992 GT3 wasn't. This has got so much theater about it. It's screaming about everything it's doing because you're living with the engine.
I can't imagine what this is like on track, but we need to track this. And so we are taking it to the nearest actual F1 track, Spa-Francorchamps in Belgium. GT3RS 991.2 flavor. And you might think that this is now irrelevant because the 992 GT3 and then the RS version is coming.
It is at this point the only other RS to compare to. There'll be a new 992 GT3 RS, but it's not out yet. So this is the benchmark for the GT4 RS. But from here, we're going to go into the 992 GT3 and we're going to see how the GT4 holds up to both these cars.
I'm instantly home. Eau Rouge in a GT3 RS.
The balance under heavy braking is just the party piece of the 911. Of course, the pendulum back end, you can get it wrong, it can dance on you, but that's part of the fun too. So many of the things about the 911 chassis that can be scary, the strangeness of rotation, and the fact that the back has all that weight in it can come around. So much of that has been quelled by the time you get to the GT cars. It's there, but you have to really do stuff to find it.
A little squirrely. Driving a 911 is so different than driving a Cayman, and it's because of that weight.
A little bit of throttle to settle the back end of the 911. It does crazy grip things.
I love that you can just beat on Porsches like this. 9,000 RPM, every shift, all over the track, all day long. It just needs gas and you keep going. What I love about the GT3 is how it pulls better driving out of me. It pulls different driving out of me. I know there's so much I still need to learn. I mean, this is astounding. The front end is so light. There's so much communication.
I'm not the biggest fan of the 911, but man, you get in a GT3, especially this RS, and you put it on a track and you understand where the love comes from. I don't understand where the posing comes from. There are people that have made careers out of owning the GT lineup of Porsches and they never bother to track them, but they drive them around Los Angeles and talk about how great they are. Come on, guys. This is brilliant. It makes tracking at very high speed easy. This is the tool that simplifies the job. And so if you're a person who just wants to feel like a rock star at your local track day, may I present the GT3. Yes, you can get it wrong. Yes, that engine way out back can bite. But there's so much headroom on this car, so much room to learn, so much ability to make yourself better. But I think it infects people as they learn the chassis, and now they don't want to try anything else.
And this makes me want to be a better and better driver. But I'm wrestling with this up against the Cayman, which is home because I have a GTS and I'm used to tracking it, and I understand and feel the rotation, and it seems natural. And this seems like I need to change my driving style and unlearn things and relearn things. But I love that about this car because there's stuff waiting out here. There's more waiting for me that I'm not taking advantage of.
We've got these on track in production order. So this is the 992 GT3, but not the RS, because the GT3 RS is actually kind of in camo testing right now as we shoot this video series.
This car is completely different than the prior GT3 RS. My speed has returned. It was not there. I feel like I was kind of tiptoeing through some of these corners in the RS. And this is the regular old GT3, but it's the next generation. So how do you make the next one better?
The 911 tendencies are kind of gone here. The stuff that I was having to look out for in the 991.2 GT3 RS, that's kind of gone. The stuff where every now and then it reared its head as a rear-engine car, I'm feeling very little of that in this.
The GT3 RS is 3153. This is 100 pounds lighter than that. It's the next generation. It has slightly less horsepower, 503 versus 513, but it's lighter, and it is all about the suspension.
What I'm struck by in this 992 GT3 is that it's really easy. I mean, I suddenly realize I'm in hero mode, and I am no hero. This car makes it easy to go blindingly quick.
I am fast in this car. This has now made me want a 911 more than ever before. I had no idea.
This feels remarkably easy to drive. It feels like we've headed more toward an even more docile car. It reminds me of the Nissan GTR. Now, it's got more character than the GTR because that's all-wheel drive and it really mutes things a lot. But this does that same thing where it makes you feel like a rock star and you're not. The person that you think is a terrible driver, put them in a 992 GT3 and suddenly they're fast. There's no doubt in my mind that somebody that is a professional racing driver can pull more out of this car than I can. But just about anybody could get in this car and set lap times that shock themselves.
Yes, the front end is light. Yes, there's lots of communication. Yes, you can get the back end around. And yes, it's still a tail-happy 911. But I feel like they're just finding new ways to do the 911 recipe. It is so good. Everybody talks about the front suspension changing the dynamics of the car, but I'm blown away.
I bet you Paul prefers this over the GT3 RS we were in. I bet you he does. So I prefer something that tries to bite and you have to earn it a bit. So as a result, this is a car that it's not asking as much of me.
The other thing about this front suspension is that it's supposed to be comfortable, and it's brilliant on track. I've discovered myself again, and yet it's still great for touring, for road.
I preferred the GT3 RS, I have to say it. I'm very curious about that Cayman with this engine. Of course, we lose the double wishbone suspension going from this back to the Cayman, which has struts. And the double wishbone, I think, helps with a lightness and a precise feel to the front end of this. Not that the GT3 RS was sloppy.
GT4 RS, the car that everybody wants and nobody can get.
Now, from the Porsche collection comes the GT4 RS, offered to you, I don't know.
We've got a green track and nobody's out. I'm first out. This is great.
Oh, come on now. That's pornographic. It's a family show. We need to put like a adults only rating on this.
I'm feeling all the dynamics of my Cayman GTS in this car with far better brakes and a whole lot more power. I'm astounded Porsche built this car. But what they've done is now make baby brother, I think, better than everybody. I'm used to it. Just add power, just be confident. To 9,000. This is the car that I want to be in every time.
Mid-engines can bite, and sometimes mid-engines are scary, but Porsche's made the most docile, approachable one for a while in the Boxster Cayman chassis, so this is already a win. I like everything about this chassis more than the 911. I know somebody out there thinks that's sacrilege. I don't care. This is magical.
You've got to be kidding me. I'm going as fast in this car at the end of Kimmel Straight as I am in the GT3RS. That's amazing. Now, we're back to strut type suspension in this car. Why is this car so good? The difference here is the rotation of the car.
I love the mid-engine rotation. I can't believe this car weighs more, slightly more, than that 992 GT3 because it feels so much smaller than the GT3 does.
I can't believe the world is coming at me like this. I am so consistently faster through the double left than I am in any other car.
Compared to that GT3, this is just playful on a level the GT3 isn't. Now maybe the RS will be, but there's a playfulness here and a lightness to the rotation that I like better.
I'm amazed at the refinements that Porsche is able to do and still make their cars better to drive, more engaging, more fun. That's the whole point. If you're not having fun, go home.
And I'm sure that the GT3 RS will be wonderful, but it still won't have this mid-engine rotation, and it won't have the engine in the cabin with me. This is the Porsche I would buy. The last time I said that was the GT2 RS, which was awesome, but I like this more than that car.
You can drive this car too. The RSR guys will happily put you in it, but this is worth your money. I don't care whether you buy one or you pay the money to rent this from RSR. I really hope there's GT4 RSs in heaven. I really hope Spa's in heaven too.
Hang on. That's worth stopping for.
This is just so great. Sunny day at Spa in a GT4 RS. No, it doesn't get better.
Favorite Porsche ever, right here. For sure. It does all the things I love in a car with a Porsche badge on it. That's good stuff.
This is the car you want. Of all three, I love the 992 GT3, and after the GT3 RS, I really didn't think I'd love it as much. It's a different car. But this thing...
Oh, I gotta go in now, don't I? Oh, that's frustrating. At least I got to do it. Oh, this is good.
Food, water, shelter, and a GT4 RS. There's so much to be found in this car. This is so good. I love it so dearly.
This speaks to me. Touches me in all the right places. I know it's not a family show anymore. I'm sorry. Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff.
This is revelatory. I didn't realize the 992 GT3 was this good, but you get the sense now. You understand why incremental improvements over the years have been so important to keep the consistency, and now to reach this level, it's astounding. What a brilliant car. This is worth every dollar. This is worth the markup.
This GT3 is incredible, but it's not as interesting as that Cayman. That you can put kind of anybody in here and they will go fast. I think that's one of the reasons that the GT3s are starting to appeal so much. I'm incredibly thrilled that RSR allowed us to drive this car. I'm glad to say I've been in it. I'm incredibly impressed by it. I'm also fine to give it back.
Yes, everybody wants this car. I am desperate for this car. In the first few feet, the first few meters, I need this car.
And what I can't believe is that Porsche's done the thing we asked. What we always wanted, the big 911 engine in the Cayman, is here, and it's even better than we imagined. Even at road speeds, where I know I'm kind of teasing the car and I'm not pushing it at all, I am impressed by how much this car is just fun.
You know when we say there isn't a perfect car? I'm beginning to think we're wrong. I think we might have found something that, oh gosh, has negated every thought about that. I'm in love. I can't believe this car. I can't believe it exists. And I'm very glad we get to drive it.